Welcome to session number 7, tutorial number 3. Control project resources, process components. In this video, we are going to discuss the process components involved in control project resources process. This includes process inputs, process tools and techniques, and process outputs. As you see, there are many inputs, tools and techniques and outputs associated with controlling project resources. To ensure that the resources are well assigned, managed and controlled during the project development life cycle. Let's dive in and try to understand what are these inputs, what are the tools and techniques, and what are the outputs and their exact usage. The diagram you see explains all the documents, artifacts, and the processes that are connected to the control resources process. The control resources techniques discussed here are the ones used most frequently on projects. There are many other that may be useful on certain projects or in some application areas. Updating resource allocation requires knowing what actual resources have been used to date and what is still needed. This is done mainly by reviewing the performance usage to date. Control resource or resources is concerned with some of the following: monitoring resource expenditures, identifying and dealing with resource shortage, surplus in a timely manner, ensuring that the resources are used and released according to the plan and project needs, informing appropriate stakeholders if any issues arise with the relevant resources, influencing the factors that can create resource utilization change, and managing the actual changes as they occur. So there are a lot of processes, tools and techniques that are associated with controlling project resources. Let's dive in and try to learn those. Process inputs. Let's have a look at the process inputs that are associated with control project resources process. Project management plan components include but not limited to the resource management plan. The resource management plan provides guidance on how physical resources should be used, controlled, and eventually released. Project documents that can be considered as inputs for this process include but not limited to: number 1, issue log; second, lesson learned register. Issue log is used to identify the issues such as lack of resources, delays in raw material supplies, or low grades of raw material. Lessons learned register is used to identify and track the lessons learned during the previous stages of your project. Lessons learned early in the project can be applied to later phases in the project to improve physical resource control. Physical resource assignments. The physical resource assignments describe the expected resource utilization along with details such as type, amount, location, and whether the resource is internal to the organization or outsourced. Project schedule. The project schedule shows the resources that are needed, when they are needed, and the location where they are needed. Resource breakdown structure. The resource breakdown structure provides a reference in case any resource needs to be replaced or reacquired during the course of the project. Resource requirements. Resource requirements identify the needed material, equipment, supplies, and other resources. Risk register. The risk register identifies individual risks that can impact equipment, materials, and supplies. Work performance data contains data on project status such as the number of resources and the type of resources that have been used in the project. Agreements made within the context of the project are the basis for all resources external to the organization and should be defined procedures. When new unplanned resources are needed or when issues arise with the current resources. The organizational process assets that can influence the control resource process include but are not limited to policies regarding resource control and assignment, escalation procedures for handling issues within the performing organization, and lessons learned repository from previous similar projects. So far, we discussed the process inputs associated with controlling project resources. Now let's go into the process tools and techniques used by this process area. Data analysis. Under data analysis, we're talking about alternative analysis. Data analysis techniques that can be used in this process include, but are not limited to, this technique: alternatives analysis. Alternatives can be analyzed to select the best resolution for correcting variances in resource utilization. Alternatives such as paying additional for overtime or additional team resources can be weighed against a late delivery or phased deliverables. Trend analysis. As the project progresses, the project team may use trend analysis based on the current performance information to determine the resources needed at upcoming stages of the project. Trend analysis examines the project performance over time and can be used to determine whether the performance is improving or deteriorating. Cost-benefit analysis. This analysis helps to determine the best corrective action in terms of cost in case of project deviations. Performance reviews. Performance reviews measure, compare, and analyze planned resource utilization to actual resource utilization. Cost and schedule work performance information can also be analyzed to help pinpoint issues that can influence resource utilization. Problem solving may use a set of tools that helps the project manager to solve problems that arise during the control resource process. The problem can come from inside the organization or from the outside of the organization. The project manager should use methodical steps to deal with the problem solving, which can include identify the problem, specify the problem, define the problem, which means you may need to break the problem into smaller manageable problems. Investigate. During the investigation, try to collect as much as data you could collect. Analyze. Find the root cause of the problem. Use one of the root cause analysis techniques like 5 whys technique or fishbone technique. At the end of the analysis phase, you need to understand the clear root causes of the problem. Solve. After identifying the root cause, choose the suitable solution from a variety of available ones. Check the solution. Determine if the problem has been fixed. Trying to solve the problem, the next stage is to evaluate the effectiveness of the problem solution. If the solution is being effective, figure it out, note it down and communicate it to the relevant stakeholders and manage the resources accordingly. Interpersonal and team skills, sometimes known as soft skills, are personal competencies. The interpersonal and the team skills used in this process include negotiation. The project manager may need to negotiate for additional physical resources, change in physical resources, or cost associated with the resources. Influencing. Influencing can help the project manager solve problems and obtain resources needed in a timely manner. Project management information systems can also include resource management or scheduling software that can be used to monitor the resource utilization, which helps ensure that the right resources are working on the right activities at the right time and place. So far, we have discussed process inputs and process tools and techniques. Now, let's have a deep dive into the process outputs. What are the outputs produced by control project resources process? Number 1, work performance information. Work performance information includes information on how the project work is progressing by comparing resource requirements and resource allocation to resource utilization across the project activities. This comparison can show gaps in the resource availability that need to be addressed. Second, change request. When change requests occur as a result of carrying out the control resource process, or when recommended, corrective or preventive actions impact any of the components of the project management plan or project documents, the project manager needs to submit a change request. Change requests are processed for review and disposition through the Perform integrated change control process. There might be various approvals involved in approving a given change request. The project manager needs to navigate through them and ensure that necessary approvals are gained in order to proceed with the changes. Any change to the project management plan goes through the organization's change control process via a change request. Components that may require a change request for the project manager include but are not limited to resource management plan. The resource management plan is updated to reflect actual experience in managing project resources. Schedule baseline. Changes to the project schedule may be required to reflect the way project resources are being managed. Cost baseline. Changes to the project cost baseline may be required to reflect the way project resources are being managed as well. Project documents that may be updated as a result of performing this process include, but are not limited to, number one, assumption log. The assumption log may be updated with new assumptions regarding equipment, materials, supplies, and other physical resources. Second, issue log. New issues raised as a result of this process are recorded in the issue log. Third, lessons learned register. The lessons learned register can be updated with techniques that were effective in managing resource logistics, utilization variances, and corrective actions that were used to respond to resource variances. Fourth, physical resource assignments. Physical resource assignments are dynamic and subject to change due to availability, the project organization, environment, or other factors. Resource breakdown structure. Changes to the resource breakdown structure may be required to reflect the way project resources are being used. Risk register. The risk register is updated with any new risk associated with resource availability, utilization, or other physical resource risks.